Good evening, everybody. I said good evening, everybody. Wow, what a crowd for an evening like this. Congratulations. Congratulations on being badass enough to be here despite the weather. And we will make it worth the effort, I assure you. Well, the theme tonight is how to be a badass for good, stepping up with ethics and courage. And my name is Irshad. This is Angela. Next to Angela is Jonathan. And on the far side here is Melanie. And I introduce everybody this way because we want tonight to be a conversation, not a presentation. A conversation about doing something truly maverick, namely, figuring out your values and turning them into actions. Small, daily, but significant as in meaningful actions, meaningful because they have to do with your integrity. I won't presume to know what's on your mind. You all will have a chance to ask questions after we have started the conversation up here. But I do ask of each of you just one thing. Use this evening to be bold and to get real. Real about where you're at in your own journey to moral courage, to doing the right thing in the face of your fears. After all, and I'll ask you this question, where else, truly, where else will you have the opportunity to think out loud about your integrity, free from judgment, and with a marvelous view like this, right? By the way, there's also going to be a reception. Hi, Tony. There's also going to be a reception afterwards. So if I don't get to your deeply courageous, brilliantly bold question, just remember that you'll be able to corner any one of our speakers on the other side of this room in about an hour and a half. And I do want to let you know that joining the conversation via simulcast all the way from sunny California is the graduate MBA program of Net Impact at UC Irvine. Now, I can't see them. They can see us, so welcome, folks. I know that you'll be tweeting your questions, so please send them to either NYU Leads or NYU Reynolds. And these two, where are we here? NYU Reynolds and NYU Leads are the sponsors of tonight's event. And finally, let me also welcome everybody from around the world who is watching us via the live stream. And I'll ask all of the people in the social media universe as well to tweet away your questions, your comments, tweet away as we now get underway. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. So let's start on the note of values, which is something that I have found very few people give themselves a permission to think about. You are all, in your own ways, mavericks, in that you're thinking about how to do what you do with integrity. Angela, what are your values? What are the principles and ideals by which you strive to live and work?
Hi, I'm a physician by training, and I work with young people ages 10 to 24 here in New York. I run the Mount Sinai Adolescent Health Center. And I think I basically believe that healthcare is a right, it's a human right, it's a civil right, and that people should get healthcare, and that we are all better off if everyone is healthy and is able to really reach their full potential. So I run this program where we see over 11,000 young people every year for free. We don't charge at all. And I think it's just that belief that we all have the right to have access to an education, to health, to jobs, and that we are a much stronger society when that happens. And the way that I learned that, I didn't know much. I grew up extremely poor. I'm an immigrant. I was undocumented. I was high school dropout. But I was able to.
You were a high school dropout?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. So, but I had the opportunity to get into Columbia Medical School. And what I learned there, and I had a very complicated life that I'm not going to bore you with.
Oh, no. I don't think it's
Like
boring
this,
to
like
tell
you-
us about your complicated life.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Not at all.
So my first semester in medical school, I got sick. I needed surgery, so I was out for a long time. And I came from such a different background than the other students. And I was married. I decided to get married before medical school very young. And I didn't live on campus. And I could have just gone that way, and I assure you that I had never been able to really be able to catch up and be able to stay on top of the work. Medical school is just too much volume to be out for like a month or two and be able to make it. And the medical students from that school that are very different than myself, very different background, decided that they were going to make sure I stay on top of the class. So they used to come to my home in Washington Heights, my apartment with my husband, and they used to meet with me and bring all the lessons that they were learning to make sure that I stay up with the class. So I realized there that because they did that, we were all much better off. I was able to keep up, I was able to graduate, and they themselves, that didn't affect their career. They're all also physicians. And I just realized that when we have this network where we all help each other, and we have this sort of safety net in a way, that we are all much better off. So I decided to live my life like that because they gave me a gift. So.
Can I quickly ask you, Angela, I understand how you became better off as a result of the help that your classmates offered. How did it help them?
I think that, I assume they saw it, we used to study together, so they knew that I was able to do the work, even though I obviously I came from city, school, public schools and things like that. And I think they just felt that they were doing the right thing. And that's what I assume. I actually never asked them. That would have been a great question for me to ask them, but I never did. And every so often when I see them, some of them are in New York, but they go all over. It's just such a warm feeling because I know these people gave me a gift.
Right.
And if they didn't care, if it was just about being individualistic and about themselves, then they would have moved forward, but I would not have had then the amazing life that I have had, at least in part because of that.
Can I quickly jump over to Melanie because I see a theme. Whoa, she's looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? Don't worry, it only gets worse from here, okay? Melanie, as the founder of something called the Foundry Theater, which you'll tell us more about in just a second, the word co-create really comes to mind. From what I know about you, you are all about co-creating the world. And that is a major theme that jumps out at me from what Angela just told us.
Well,
and she's in a completely different field than you are. It's working.
Well, it's really funny because I started the Foundry when I went back to do a post-bac in pre-med in my 30s, thinking that I would be more useful in the world as a doctor than an artist. And I had to go all the way back and do high school math, algebra, just to be able to do calculus, to be able to, et cetera, et cetera. And when it came time for me, I began preparing for my MCATs. I kind of had a bit of a nervous breakdown because I realized actually I wouldn't be able to be making art anymore once I hit med school. And I really thought for a very long time and also spoke with Dr. Cornel West, who was a very much, I don't know, a kind of philosopher king for me in those days. And
And for many of us still.
And yeah, he was my first board member. And and the idea of healing and the idea of building community, there's such a parallel in medicine and art making, and the way people's souls and health are considered in a very kind of inclusive way and an intersectional way. It's not just, here's a Band-Aid for this sore, it's where did you get that sore and how, you know. So the building of art and the building of theater, am I still on?
Yes.
You are.
Cool.
You're a soft speaker, though. Can you project a little louder?
I'll do my best.
All right.
So the idea of building community is in the theater by itself. I mean, very few people write, produce, direct, perform, and et cetera, their show. It's a collaborative medium. And so you're always sharing the work. There isn't a one person, or there's never a one person.
Right.
So because that begins, that's where I live. It's where I lived when I went to pre-med, and it's what I returned to when I decided I couldn't go to med school. This idea of community building, making it possible for a community to identify itself, to support one another, to et cetera, were the roots of the Foundry, I think. Does that answer your question in any way?
I don't know that it does, but it does remind me to ask you exactly what I asked Angela, because, you know, tonight is about helping all of us at least start the conversation with ourselves and hopefully each other about values. What do I stand for? And what am I willing to do about it? So here's the question. Simple question, not so simple to answer, I know. Do you recall what you told me when I first asked you a few days ago? What are the values by which you strive to live and work?
Yeah.
You had a very crisp answer for me.
Yeah, I'm constantly wondering how the work that I do and the time of my life is useful.
Yeah.
And I'm also always worrying the bone about what useful means, because what I think might be useful may not be useful to somebody that I think is going to be, you know. So it's a constant, I guess, dance around notions of usefulness and participation, and how I'm part of inviting people to continually make the world together. I would say, and it's a particularly interesting measure or metric, given that I'm a theater artist, and I don't know that the usefulness of theater art or theater is common parlance. I don't know what the measure of it is. Except somebody once, there's a woman who's written a book who said, I'm going to get the quote wrong, never mind, I'll come back to it. So I just think that the troubling of usefulness and art making, particularly theater art, is an interesting set of values to be working around with, through.
Do you ever, Jonathan, I'll get to you in just a moment, do you ever take, do people ever take shots at you for even marrying the idea of being useful with being an artist?
I don't know if they dare. Perhaps they do behind my back. I don't notice.
Yeah.
Why would they?
Why would they?
Yeah.
I just think that sometimes, the various worlds, not just the world of art, can be so full of people who have these presumptions about their purity. I can tell you, scholars, there's a fair amount of that among scholars, okay, that to want to be useful can be a very provocative and controversial thing, because some people will say, it doesn't matter whether I'm useful, you know, I'm I'm doing what I am good at doing, and people will take from it what they will or not. And you're saying, actually, we can strive for better than that.
Well, but I mean, I think that, I do think that there are some people that automatically assume because there's politics in the Foundry that we do political theater. And actually, I think that there's a lot of serious artists that might write us off because that's the assumption that only because there's but in fact, we actually don't make political theater. Not that there isn't politics in the theater that we make, but so I do think that there may be some, rigorous art makers who aren't necessarily rigorous in their analysis of what it is that we do, and I think that we could be written off by, and then we're also written off to some degree by political theater makers because we don't make message-based work. So, but I don't think I don't feel judged by that. I just feel like we're doing something that we mean to do, and if it doesn't fit in your understanding or your understanding,
That's all right.
Yeah, I don't feel taken apart by that.
Right. Jonathan, you are in journalism.
Where I'm taken apart every day,
Really?
all the time. But go on.
Well, no, you go on. By whom?
Well, let's see. Folks on Twitter, folks on Facebook, folks on my voicemail, folks in my inbox. I mean, being a journalist, and especially being an opinion journalist, where a lot of my opinions are unpopular with a lot of people, you put yourself out there to be beaten up. But, that's why you take this job. Or I should not you.
To be
I should
beaten
say,
up?
that's why I take this job. Well, it gets to the question you're going to ask me, which that you asked Melanie and Angela, and that is, what are my values?
Yeah.
And when you asked me that question, it sort of took me aback because I hadn't thought of it that way. I like to think, live my values all the time that I had not taken a chance to step back to think about, well, what actually does that mean?
Right.
And for me, the one I told you was to treat others the way I want to be treated. The other thing that I realized, and this is the mantra that I tell young journalists all the time, and that is to be true to yourself. There's so much pressure to be someone you're not, or to act a certain way, or even to say certain things because you think that's what will get you invited on television or invited back, to write certain things just to get noticed, just to, and fine, if you have a provocative opinion and you put it out there and you catch hell for it, for good or for bad, great, if you believe it. But there are so many people in my business who say and do things simply because they want the notoriety. And you can tell when someone writes something or says something that they don't truly believe. And to me, it's kind of gross.
So apart from the fact that it's gross, so what that it's gross? Doesn't it work? They get the airtime. They get the ink time, they get the notoriety, and therefore more contracts, et cetera, right?
Yeah, but
what's wrong with playing the game?
Well, this gets back to what you were saying. That's if you're thinking about the individual. If you're thinking about yourself, if all you want is to climb the ladder because you want to be a big-time columnist or you want to be a big-time television person, you want to be the anchor of a show, you want to do whatever, you want to be in the limelight, fine, that's great. But that's not how I do my job. Every day, everything I write, I feel a huge responsibility for whatever it is I say, whatever it is I write, because I understand just from reading the reactions from people, whether they're cursing me out or they're giving me very nice compliments, I'm speaking for someone. That's not, that I'm speaking for myself, but over the years I've come to discover that a lot of people depend on me to speak for them, because lots of things that I say and write, and when I say, I'm mostly meaning write, there are people who will come to me and they will say, thank you for what you've written about fill in the blank situation that's happened, because that's the way I feel, that's the way I think, and I'm too afraid. And this is when I was at the Daily News back in the 90s. I would write things that lots of people were thinking
Right.
in the gay community, but were so afraid to say it. And I came to realize this because no one would ever actually come up to me and or in a venue like this and say, thank you so much for writing that piece. They would come up to me on the side and sort of whisper and just say, keep going. Mm-hmm. That's when I realized that while I was writing something that I truly believed in here, and that was, I thought, important for the city conversation, or now in the way that I write, the national conversation, I grew to understand that what I was doing was speaking for a lot of people. And here's the analogy that I use. In the job that I have, my job as an opinion writer is to poke my head above the foxhole and take the shots. I'll write an unpopular opinion. The one I came up with is actually probably kind of popular now with the left and the right. But I could take a position on, say, one is escaping me, but one that would be sort of viewed as unpopular. I'll say it. Mm-hmm. People will yell and scream at me, curse me out, either to my face or in my inbox or whatever. But I'll understand that there are people behind me in the foxhole mm-hmm. who are cheering me on, who are saying, absolutely, we're behind you. Thank you for doing it so that I don't have to, or I'm too afraid to, or I can't because just individually it would be problematic for me to do so.
I have to say that I find that answer, me personally, it's self-problematic. Mm-hmm. Because isn't part of, I guess, being useful, which in some way, don't all of us strive to be in some way? Isn't part of being useful equipping people to reach their own conclusions about what they believe?
Oh, sure. But I mean, you have to understand, though, when I write something, again, it's my opinion. And when I write something, especially in this day and age, the beauty of the internet age, the age that we're in now, is that if I say the sky is blue, I can put in a hyperlink that will lead you to a credible source that will explain why the sky is blue. I can make an assertion, or I could write an entire piece that 99% of the people who read it will not agree with. Mm-hmm. But I'm not just putting opinions out there to be provocative or just, for some silly exercise. I will put in all the reporting that I've done, all of the studies and the columns and the right. reportage, so that a person can read it and come to their own conclusions. Now, I wrote this isn't a good example, but I wrote a piece today saying that the Democratic Convention should go to Philadelphia. And I went through why Brooklyn is a bad idea and why Columbus is a bad idea, filled with all sorts of links. People wrote back, you're absolutely wrong. Mm-hmm. You're wrong, and here's why. Convention cities never make any difference when it comes to the way the country will vote for a particular presidential candidate. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I'm not telling people how they should think or what they should what they should think. I'm telling them what I think,
right.
and then you come to your own conclusions.
Right.
I mean, that's what opinion writing is all about. It's not saying this is the absolute right answer.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What are you nodding so
Well, I
so
agree.
ardently about?
Being useful has so many.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a fractal, for goodness sake.
What does that mean, fractal? in this
It
case.
just splits and splits and keeps on going and keeps on going. There's so many meanings to usefulness. It doesn't mean,
And I don't think that I'm not useful.
right.
Oh, no, that's exactly my point.
Well, right.
You-
Well, I
you-
mean,
you know,
the
that-
impression I got was like, well, you know, you gave this answer, but how is that useful?
Right.
And,
I got that too.
you know,
Really,
and
you got that too? Okay, so that's so not what I meant. So
that's why I was surprised. Like, you're shy.
excuse,
You've been
no, no,
friends
no.
for years.
No, and we remain. You know, we can disagree with each other's ideas without denying each other's humanity. How's that? But not bad, right? Okay. But what I was simply meaning to say was that, you know, you was it you, Jonathan, who started off, or maybe it was one of the conversations we had prior. No, you said it just now. Now I recall. Be true to yourself. It seems to me that part of the way we figure out in a relatively free society what my truth is, what your truth is, and how we integrate that, you know, with all the rest of what we are, is by engaging in conversations that are taboo, and that allow other people to go, I'm not going to let you speak for me. You've inspired me to ask questions. And I don't want to be just part of a tribe. I want to be able to be critical, you know, of much more than just what I'm against.
You know, but even though people have their own thoughts
Yeah.
and value or whatever, they don't always have the opportunity
Right.
to express them or to have an audience. So, you know, what I see about some of the stuff that you're doing, Jonathan, is really amplifying people's voices. I mean, everyone
Yeah.
has a voice, everyone has a thought, but not everyone has the opportunity to
Correct.
put their thinking out there.
Right.
For a number of reasons, maybe because of the issue or because they just are not necessarily integrated in society.
Right.
But it's important to bring all the different perspectives.
So, Angela, you did already begin to tell us how you started figuring out your values. There was that, you know, extremely central experience in Columbia Medical School, where you saw other people who were not part of your immediate or biological family, come to you and help. And you realized, yeah, life is better for all of us this way. What did you learn about those people? Beyond the fact that they could be helpful, that helped you understand who you are and what you stand for?
Well, I learned that people care, that they obviously, even medical students are very busy just with their own volume, but they felt that they needed to go outside themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, I assume that they believe the same way that I believe now, that making sure that everyone succeeds is better for everyone. Because they could have just stayed in their dorm or their room or the library doing their own work,
Right.
but they care. So these people seem to have more of like a social consciousness that go beyond just their own particular needs. That's what I learned.
One thing, and if I'm misquoting you, you will tell me. One thing I remember from a conversation we had a few days ago, you mentioned, I think, that when you were growing up in the Bronx, right? You didn't know a whole lot of white people. And the generosity with which your, in addition to, you know, students of color, with which white students treated you when you were sick, showed you something about white people that you didn't know before.
Well, I just was not exposed. As I said, as an immigrant, I came to the South Bronx, and then I went to Washington Heights. So I lived within like 20 blocks in New York City. And I went to inner city school, so I saw more people that looked like myself, especially in terms of class, not just color, but also
Right.
color. And then I come to Columbia, and it's very diverse in class, in color or type of people. And I actually have, from that beginning, I have come, because then after Columbia, I went to Mount Sinai, and I have this job, and just amazing opportunities. And I'm one what I think probably the few people in New York that almost on a daily basis go from extremes, extreme poverty, to really like millionaires, billionaires. I go into their homes, I spend time with them, almost fluid, and you see all these people and how they function and all the issues. And I think that's really a rich experience, because often whether you're poor or whether you're rich or whether you're, whatever color you are, people tend to be much more homogeneous in their experiences. And when you go all across, it just gives you a richness that I'm so thankful to that.
Jonathan, how did you begin to understand your values and begin to articulate them?
Well, my earliest memory, as I told you in our conversation, goes back to when I was an intern on the Today Show, and we're talking the 80s, so most of you were not alive.
Awesome decade.
Right, but there was
The
a
music was unbelievable.
but there was an anchor woman, a big time anchor woman by the name of Connie Chung, and who was absolutely lovely and so warm and open and friendly. So here I was, this 17, 18-year-old kid who would say hi to her on the set, and I would say, well, I would love to come talk to you. And she said, oh, come by my office. This is when you could still smoke in buildings, and she's a big chain smoker. Sorry, I hope I didn't out her on that. But anyway, so she said, come by. So I and a couple of other interns went over to her office, and we asked her for advice. We want to do what you're doing. By the time we're your age, give us some advice. And she said, the number one piece of advice I would give you is to be nice to everybody. Be nice to everybody on your way up, because you will definitely see them on your way down. And you're bright-eyed 17, 18-year-old, you're like, what does that mean? Now when you're 30 years later, you get it. And it goes back to my treat others the way you want to be treated. And as a black man, as an openly gay man, I'm very sensitive to that. I would never want to intentionally treat somebody disrespectfully, callously, coarsely, unless they deserved it, unless they do it to me first. But because there's so many people out there who they demand respect without giving it. They are rude and horrible to people, and then want to know why folks are rude and horrible back to them. I'm the person who still, in this day and age, will hold the door open for people, who will do all sorts of things, because the last thing I would want to have happen is to, in some way be responsible for someone either getting hurt, being hurt, or just having a bad day. Because, life is, sometimes life can be hard enough that these little things add up.
Right.
So that's my earliest memory of when I sort of got that lesson and learned that lesson. And to this day, it's still it's front of mind.
Yeah. And what about the authenticity piece? Be true to yourself. Was there a particular moment, like the Connie Chung moment, when you realized how important this is for you?
Unless I told you a specific moment, I can't think of one now.
Right.
But, when I joined the Daily News editorial board in 1993, and I was 25 years old, I had no idea who I was. I knew I was gay. That I knew. I knew I was a Democrat. That I knew, thanks to Mario Cuomo, 1984 Democratic Convention speech. But other than that, all the issues that we talked about and wrote about, I had no idea. I didn't know. Right. They were wonderful enough to hire me, and I got to learn at the feet of some very, very smart people. But over the years and through reporting and just learning about the city and just meeting people and having friends, I started to understand who I was, what my value was, and my usefulness, and how I was going to go about that.
Did you actually make time to think about that
I
as you were going through your career and life?
Well, sure. Again, because as an opinion writer,
Right.
you're putting yourself out there. And the reason why I brought up the Daily News editorial board, it's because you've got all these people sitting around the table and you're talking about issues, but you're also bringing your own personal story,
Right.
your history, your upbringing to every conversation. And so there are days when I had to confront, especially in New York City in the last year of Dinkins, 8 years of Giuliani, with all of the police brutality questions, Amadou Diallo, Patrick Dorisman, to sit at that table and be the only African-American man at the table to talk about what these things mean. I remember when Amadou Diallo was shot and killed.
Remind us who he
I'm
was.
sorry. He was the guy, I believe it was the South Bronx and the Special Crimes Unit saw him, asked him to come out, and asked him for identification. He reaches into his pocket. They thought he had a gun. They shot and killed him in a hail of 41 bullets.
41 times.
I think 18 of the bullets hit him. Now, at this table, there was an African-American woman on the board who was incredibly upset.
This is the editorial board.
Editorial board at the
Of the
Daily
Daily
News.
News.
Very angry, pounding the table, tears in her eyes. And I could see that she was losing the editor and the deputy and everyone else around the table because she was very emotional. And I got it, and I understood. And I sat there as she went on. And then it was my turn to speak. And I just turned to my editor and I said, I've never been in trouble with the police ever in my entire life. But today, I'm going to go out and buy myself a regular wallet. And I reached into my pocket and said, because I carry a money clip. What would happen to me if I was stopped, asked for identification, I pull out a money clip and they see a glint of silver, and then I get shot? I said, again, I've never had a problem with the police, but as a black man, I am very fearful of the police. And I have personally, no reason to be fearful. But I do. And so through situations like that, and when I did the editorial series on the Apollo Theater, going up to Harlem, being called all sorts of names, because I worked for this white newspaper that was trying to destroy, this jewel up in Harlem.
So
the
being
Apollo
called
Theater.
names by fellow
being
African
called-
Americans.
Yeah, being called an Uncle Tom, a sellout, all these things. But it was then, again, being true to myself, trying to save a theater. This is, again, trying to be useful. And realizing that all these people can call me names, but I am doing something that's right. I mean, the Apollo Theater back then was a dump, a complete dump. Today, it's magical again.
Right.
And so, again, through all of those conversations and those experiences, I was able to learn who I was, what it meant to be true to myself, and also knowing that being true to myself meant taking very unpopular positions and being able to withstand the hell that would be unleashed on me as a result of it.
Right. And I think you made a brilliant point earlier that, taking these unpopular positions, as long as they are sincere.
Right.
Not being a provocateur or a contrarian just for the hell of it.
Right. Because, and the reason why I bring that up, and the reason why I say it's gross, it's because, especially again in this age that we live in, when I started at the Daily News, you only had ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, Newsweek, Time. You had very finite sources of information. And as a journalist, I had access to a whole lot more, but journalists would filter it and then send it to you through all those entities. Now, today, right now, at your chair, you could pull out your tablet, your phone, your laptop, whatever you have, and look up just about anything. You have access to all the information that I have access to, which makes provocateurs and people who just say things and write things just to get attention disgusting, because you're messing with people. People are looking for context. They're looking for understanding. They're looking for real information at a time when there's so much of it.
Right.
And so if you've got access to all this information, and you know everyone else does, and yet you will say something demonstrably false, you're not helping the conversation. You're not helping people, and I'm thinking specifically in terms of politics, you're not helping your country.
We'll get to a Q&A shortly, sir. Thank you. Melanie, let me switch gears and get to the stuff that most people don't want to talk about, which is where we've stumbled, where we've disappointed ourselves in this quest to live up to our values. Your organization, the Foundry Theater, I remember you telling me, is in the midst of some shuffling, some transition, and you're thinking now, if I'm not mistaken, what's it going to look like after me? What are the specific challenges that that sometimes trip you up as you think about life post-Melanie, the Foundry Theater post-Melanie?
Well, I don't really trip when I think about my life
Right.
post-Foundry, but I do wonder what I've been part of making and what I'm leaving behind, and how it holds the values and the kind of prefigurative intentions of like being always on the edge, not even on the edge, but like, what is another way? What's another way of doing this? What's another way, another way? Doesn't have to be the same way over and over again. We don't make widgets. We make theater, and it's different every time. So I think a lot about for example, for 20 years, we've never had a siloed staff structure. There's never been a fundraiser, a general manager, an artist. Everybody does everything. Because I think at the center of a theater company is the making of art. And if it isn't, then you don't make enough money to stay in this business. So there has to be something that's meaningful at the center of what organizes the infrastructure of a company, but it's complicated to work that way. It's differently efficient and sometimes hideously inefficient. And there are lots of ways that you could just go, well, there could be a managing director. I mean, like there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of theaters in the world that have these more traditional, very highly functioning structures. But for me, I don't understand how to let go of this is as naked as I could be in a certain way, because I'm really going through this in a big way. I think the mission of the company is alive, and I think the vision of the company is alive, and I think there are amazing people out there to take it into its next iterations. Tremendous people, especially people your age. My God, you guys, the generation of you, hallelujah, is all I can say. And so I feel really excited to imagine the way the theater will proliferate and morph in the hands of people like you. But I have a really hard time. I stumble around, for example, this issue of the infrastructure or structure. Do you know what I mean? Because anyway, I hope you understand what I mean by that. So can I let that go? Right now I feel like if I capitulate to that, Am I leaving something to the world for the world to take, to really take the next big leaps and make the future? I don't know. It's killing me, I'll be honest.
Can I just quickly ask, and quickly, what do you mean it's killing you? How does that manifest
Oh
itself?
my God, I can't even believe I'm talking about all this stuff.
Well, we're getting real. We're getting real. That's what leadership is
I'm
about.
getting real. I don't know if we're getting real.
All right.
Say the question again.
It's killing me.
Yeah,
How's
it's
it
really
killing you?
hard. It's really hard because when you're being your best self, when you're working to be your best self, and you're working to invite others to do that in particular ways, and it works and it doesn't work, but I think in many ways the Foundry is an organism that's working because of the people who've come through and been their best selves. And being their best selves is a really loose, there has to be a lot of permission for people to be their best selves. And I worry, it kills me, because I don't know how to let go of, or I don't know, shoot. Can we rewind the television show? It kills me because I feel very, very strongly about the space for people to be their best selves, about new kinds of spaces in an organizational structure for people to be their best selves. And I can imagine that in order for the company to work efficiently and effectively going forward, it's just easier to sort of fall into what I call the gullies of meaning. Like, we understand this, it works. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, okay, I don't want to fix it. I want to make something new, and I want to leave a company on the planet that is continually making something new, that is making change, both internally and externally. Because that's the other thing. Like, I feel like you got to live your values, right? And the company has to structure it. It's not like, oh, we have this structure so that we can do these really great things. This structure also has to be meaningful and useful to the world and something new, something else, something that isn't a widget.
Right.
You know, so not that widgets aren't great. I don't know what they do, but you know, we also need to make widgets, but that's not what a theater company does. So,
And that's not what you're called to do either. It's not what a
Yeah.
theater company is, and by the way, it's not, your calling.
right,
to
I'm a
make
theater
widgets.
artist, so
Right.
yeah.
Right. Thank you for this. I know, it's
I'm
killing
gonna get
you.
in trouble for this, you
No.
guys.
Well, we've got our back, right? We've got our
You don't
back.
have to have my back.
Angela, when have you stumbled?
Well, I struggle a lot with creating a space where young people can come and ask for help early, whatever the issue may be, that they may be using drugs or, engaging in sexual activity and things like that. So creating that space where they feel comfortable coming and asking for help, helping them, respecting the right to confidentiality as per New York State law, and also understanding the right of the parents. And how do you, it's almost an art of making sure that everyone gets what they need, that the kids have the confidentiality, I call them kids, young people, to come and ask for help and get what they need. And we respect their privacy, but also understanding that parents say, this is my child, and I need to know or want to know. And then creating that space and that bridge in helping that opportunity to create better communication, but it's a struggle. Like sometimes the parents may find birth control pills in their kids' bag or whatever they have it, and it has the name of our program. So they call or they come and say, how dare you give birth control pill to my kid without my permission? And first is, New York State law is that they have the right to do that. But we don't just go by the law. We really say to the parent, and we don't talk about any specific kid, but we say to the parent, a person, a young person who's doing that, is trying to be responsible. And what a wonderful opportunity for you now to try to connect with your kids and create a better communication. And I come also from I'm a parent, I have 3 kids, that a parent always wants the best for their child. They don't always, it's not always in alignment, or the young person don't always see it. So we are always struggling with that, or issues that we deal with. Or a young person that may be sexually exploited in sex trafficking right here in New York City. How do we create a space that young person is, come for help when they need it, he or she, or we work also with transgender youth. And they are not able or ready to live their life because they don't have the structure where to come and transition to. So they come to us, we help them with whatever the issue they may have, but they continue in that life that we know is not in their best interest. So we struggle with that, and we keep working with them until eventually it may take like 6 conversations or 6 try for them to actually have enough outside of that life to feel connected and be able to stay out. So we do a lot of worrying about the young people and the issues and how do we help them, but at the same time knowing what's probably in their best interest. So I struggle with that a lot. That's sort of professionally. I will say in the personal, I've raised 3 children in New York City. One of them is a black boy. And that's probably one of the hardest things that I did. Because, when he was the first decade of life, beautiful, wonderful kid. But, when in adolescence, people sort of start being, he had to face a lot of discrimination and racism. A wonderful kid. I mean, not because he's my son, I think he's a wonderful person. And then, I really struggled figuring out how do I help this boy that became very angry because of what was happening, including with the police, including with different things, and help him channel that energy into something more positive, instead of just getting angry and being killed out there because of things like that. So, and eventually it all worked out. Today he's a public defender. That's how he channels his energy. So he's in Washington, D.C. So, I struggle both in the personal and the professional, especially with that age group in adolescence, because it's an amazing time if things work out and if you're able to help shape that. I often feel like an artist and the staff, because we feel that we are helping shape these lives. So these young people, they come and trust us.
Right.
And, but sometimes it doesn't quite work out the way we want, and we have to live with that.
Speaking of live with that, do you ever feel like, from time to time, I've betrayed the trust?
I try to live my values, and sometimes even if I'm by myself, standing in one place, I feel comfortable with that.
Right.
So I always try to stand by what I think is the right thing to do. But sometimes, like if someone is being sexually abused, incest in their home, the law says we are mandated reporter. We have to report. Well, and sometimes this young person came to us. We ask them all these questions. That's why they tell us. And then if I run to say I need to go and report you and report this, then they feel betrayed the same way they felt betrayed by whoever was sexually abusing them in their home. Right. So I have to sort of try to negotiate that with them, trying to engage them in care, mental health, or whatever, try to follow or figure out with the law. And sometimes, I'm always in that kind of song and dance. And sometimes the DA, they will get really upset and call and say, how dare you? Like not call us right away. So we are always trying to figure that out. Right. And I think eventually with experience, you just get more comfortable to live in that space that is always gray. It's not really, when you deal with people or young people, it's not black and white. It's all gray. And the staff has to do that. We have to support the staff in that work. So, we struggle a lot.
So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Right. Jonathan, you have a classic story of stumble in the sense that often people make career choices that in their heart of hearts they know is not right for them. Tell us.
Okay, so this goes to being true to yourself. I've left journalism twice. The first time was actually more true to myself. I left journalism to work on Mike Bloomberg's first campaign for mayor as a policy advisor. As a political journalist, political opinion writer, the opportunity to actually work on a political campaign was too good to pass up. You write about it, but you never get to experience it. So I got to experience it. 9/11 happened, and then I came back. I went back to Bloomberg News. I went back into journalism for 2 years. And then I decided, well, I think I should now become a businessman because I need to make more money. So I decided to leave journalism and go into big, bad corporate PR. Because what else am I going to do? I could take my skills and take them there. I'm not going to name the company. I thought better of it. So the very first day, I knew that I had made the wrong decision. The very first day, standing in my new office, looking around and just feeling like, oh my God, you've made a mistake. But then I just chalked it up to butterflies, first day butterflies. But in the 2 years I was in that job, it only got worse. To the point where the last year I woke up every morning. Can I curse?
Sure.
Every morning that last year, I woke up, the alarm would go off, and I'd shoot up in bed, and I would say, fucking shit. And the clock just was so slow. Get into the office at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then I'd try to busy myself, and then it was 9:15. I would pray for lunch to come. It was a horrible professional experience and humiliating and on many fronts. But there's one particular time, two stories I think I told you. One was happy, the other one was not. One, I think I tried to go for this business for a public organization downtown. They wanted PR help. And I initially went for it. But then they called back, and I thought, I can't do it. I'm not these folks here. And I was going to skip the meeting. I was just not going to show up. And I mentioned it to a mentor, and she said, no, you have to go down there, and you have to tell them that you're withdrawing. You can't do it. And so I went downtown. I was about 30 minutes late. I walked in. I fell on the sword so many times I was Swiss cheese. It was humiliating. The other time that what was the other story? There was
The architect? The
Yes.
9/11 architect?
Yes. So I was working, a client that I actually liked, world famous architect. Loved him, loved his work. He reminded me of an ex who was also an architect, so I could understand him. We had a great relationship. And the 5th anniversary of 9/11 was coming up, and he wanted to be involved in some way. And he was asking me all of these questions that I couldn't answer. And I said to him finally, listen, what you really need is a PR person who's in your world. You need an architecture, public relations person, somebody who knows your fellow architects, who knows all of the newspapers and the journals and the magazines that you're a part of. I think I've done as much for you as I can. And he looked at me and he just shook his head and he said, see, that's why I want you. This is why I want to work with you. Because you believe in me, you believe in my work, you are coming at this with a pure heart. I'm paraphrasing what he said. That was a wonderful moment, but that was one moment in 2 years of a really bad decision. But again, it taught me, and that experience really taught me that value of being true to myself. I learned in those 2 years so much about myself, about people, that I hope to never make that mistake again. Big mistake, I always tell young people, no matter what, do not, under any circumstances, take any job just for the money. Do not. One of the reasons why I was waking up saying fucking shit every morning was because the paycheck was great, the work sucked.
And you were feeling physical pain, if I recall.
Yeah, no, it was not good, and I hated the work. I really did. In big bad corporate PR, you bring in clients, you're supposed to bring in clients, which to me was like asking, you're supposed to monetize your contacts, which to me was like asking friends for money, which I can't do. So that makes for a terrible businessman on my part. And then once you pull in the clients, you're supposed to figure out ways to keep them. So figure out some way to sell them on a product or a service so that we can pull them in even more.
And
Now,
that they don't
That
need.
they don't need.
that they don't
That's
need.
it.
That don't need. I sat in many meetings where I thought, but they don't, yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay, fine. So that's why, that's when I stumbled. That was a huge, it was more of a pratfall than a stumble, my trying to be a businessman.
Right.
And when I got the call from the Washington Post to get back into journalism, I made it a point. I took a pay cut. I moved from the city that I love. I lived here for 16 years. I did all that to get back to being true to myself. And it was the best decision I made.
Wow. Thank you. On that note, please. On that note, let's launch into what I hope will be a vibrant, challenging Q&A. But again, doesn't have to be, in fact, please, no need to be intellectually challenging. This is about you. This is about the journey that you're taking. And here are three, perhaps 3.5 people from whom you can learn. So really ask the questions that are, stirring within you and that you may not get a chance to ask too many others. We will take 3 questions at a time, and we've got people with microphones who will come up to you. And why don't we start? Let me see. I've got to see where the mics are. There we go. Thank you, Angelina. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm very intrigued by this conversation this evening. I am a whistleblower, and from a very early age, my father drummed into me, to thine own self be true, integrity, you're the one that's got to look in the mirror, live with your values, be true to your values, and stand up when they count. So as a PhD medical scientist, I had my own laboratory in a very reputable research institute where I solely and singly discovered that a class of drugs that are FDA approved, $8 billion worldwide market annually, were carcinogens. They were causing a very lethal tumor in humans that were going to cause
Kill
a
people.
lot of deaths. I thought it was my obligation as a scientist, because I think science is a public trust, and being that I'm so strong in my own value system, it was my obligation to publish, go to the FDA, go to the head of my institute, and say, we need to either get these drugs off the market or put a warning label on them, but my goal was to save lives. I had no personal interest.
Right. And
So-
your question?
So the bottom line is that I reported this in the literature. I went to the FDA. I went to every higher person in my institute that I could. And basically the end result was that I was threatened with my career. So the question is, and I paid a price, but it didn't stop me. It did not stop me. So I lobbied Congress for whistleblower protection for scientists in the private sector because I felt that the public needs some sort of protection,
Right.
and so did the scientists who have the courage to stand up.
Right.
And so the bottom line was the colleagues in my field who knew what I had done were absolutely enraged at me for telling the truth because it cost me my job and my career, and that if they were in my shoes, they would not have done that.
Exactly.
So
The question is.
the question is, would I have done it again? Yes, 100 times. But the ripple effect is that when you do stand up, when you are a whistleblower, and other people see collectively what happens to a whistleblower, someone who has a strong value system, is a negative impact for others to run from that because the consequences are so huge.
Right.
So the question then becomes, how do we create protections for people who have these values and create a collective consciousness for people to stand up when it's important and not be afraid of consequences? And collectively, I think we all have to work together to create the support for those people who might be fearful of doing this because the society doesn't reward it.
Exactly, and I want to bring that question to the folks up here on stage. But Jonathan, let me just say, in my feeble defense, that though I made you feel bad, and that was certainly not my intention earlier, that was precisely the point I was trying to get at, is that there are many ways to be useful, Melanie. You're absolutely right. And I think part of what speaks to the work I do as a teacher of moral courage is to equip people to not take shelter in voices, in other people's voices, but rather find their own voice. And I get that not everybody has that privilege and that opportunity to express themselves in a way that other people can hear. So, but I think that's ultimately like, how do we create a society in which people don't fear too much the consequences of finding and using their voice? So that's one question. Can we go to somebody on this side? Michael?
Thank you for being here. I had a question. It might go back to whistleblower, but it's actually about having an idea. And I have the idea. I have the people interested, very interested. But well, it's basically it's this huge project idea that's going to be effective for people, and it's interactive. But then I'm thinking about funding and the financial part, and I understand that you don't. You know, I also have an art background, and I understand you don't think about money, but honestly, you do as an artist, or you do as somebody who works in the arts. You don't, right? Because you're there with, and so, but then I get discouraged because it's an overwhelming, it's a huge undertaking. So what I wanted to find out, my question is, how do you keep going? How do you keep this? I mean, I have supportive friends, I have this network, but we're all busy, and then we're all doing this, and I truly believe in it, this idea. But it's just this thing of how do you keep going? How do you keep this thread going, and then the funding and that. So.
Great, thank you. One more before we begin to answer?
Yeah, hi. You folks alluded to it a little bit, but it would be great if you could be a bit more specific. And it kind of ties to the first question, and that is the relationship you have with trying to keep to what you'd like to do and the folks above you. You don't need to be specific, since I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but it's not so much where you are looking down or looking from where you are to the public. It's what's behind that's really pulling a lot of the strings that we don't hear about. And that would be very interesting to hear how you deal with the pressures that are exerted from above, because that's kind of who get...
What do you mean by above?
Well, in Jonathan's case,
Oh, okay.
Like
that would be the easiest example, but
Well, I don't
No,
have
but
a
I understand.
boss. Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
because
understand.
the public opinion, you know, that comes with the territory. It's the people who you have to answer to, which is the real challenge. And Angela, you began to deal with it when you had the issue of, do you tell the parents about something that the kids have a right to access to? But it would be interesting to hear a bit more about that side of the conflict, because that's really how you separate the people who make a difference from those who just follow what's being done all the time.
Fascinating, fascinating. Who'd like to tackle that one, and then we'll work our way back?
Well, I guess I think I'm probably rather lucky in that I can wake up in the morning not cursing anymore, but have an idea of something to write and get to my computer, either at home or at the office, write it, it gets edited, and it goes out there. I don't have anyone from above telling me, you can't write about this or you must write about that. I don't. The one thing that is happening in journalism as a whole, and particularly at our paper at the Washington Post, because I know about this, it's that if there's any pressure I have from on high, it's to get page views. Everything now is about page views. It's about the number of times you post during the day, during the month. I've heard of reporters in the newsroom who they don't have, the way their performance is measured is by the number of posts they do in a month and the number of page views they get in a month. I don't have that kind of pressure, like that kind of daily pressure, but I do have the pressure to ensure that people are coming to the Post Partisan blog to read whatever I have to say, and I'm not the only one writing for that blog, but that's something that does weigh on me. I mean, it's great to be in this job and to write about things that I care about, but for instance, I wrote this piece on, as we were talking about before, about the classification of this information coming out of Afghanistan that for the last 6 years have been used for quarterly reports for transparency's sake, to let the American people know how U.S. taxpayer dollars are being used in the reconstruction in Afghanistan, how the money is being spent, how many troops are there. That's now classified for the first time in 6 years. And so I wrote about it. And right now it is the least read thing I've written in probably a month. But I write about Sarah Palin's inane, ludicrous speech in Iowa that I watched, the 32-minute address. I'm sorry, that's a little too kind. 32-minute speech. I wrote about that.
That's being too kind, too.
Yes, that is being too kind. That got a lot of page views, thousands of page views.
So what's the takeaway for you?
So I'm pushing back on this
pressure.
idea that I've got the man sitting in my office telling me exactly what to write and when to write it. And what I'm trying to say is that the pressures that are being felt, particularly in print journalism, are not necessarily subject or topic pressures. It's
Right.
eyeball
Clicks.
pressure.
Clicks.
If I could,
is
it's
the
the
man.
nuance that I was,
Of course it's
the nuance I was trying to get at, Jonathan.
Say that
'cause
again? Sorry.
The nuance of my question was a little missed. It wasn't that you were being told what to write, but as you alluded to, it's page views. And
Right.
it's the more subtle question I'm trying to get at, that how do you negotiate when you want to cover something important and you get pushback because your page views aren't triggering enough, and and don't limit it to yourself. Please include people that you know, Angela and everyone else too.
So can I
It's
just
the
say,
larger
sir, in
picture.
the interests of the time, the limited time that we've got, so we've got a reception afterwards, and you are absolutely free to, to sort of buttonhole our speakers on that very question. I do, though, have to move on. And I want to get to the question back there about sustainability, and not of the eco kind, but self-sustainability. Melanie, I'm looking right at you because
I've been doing it a long time.
the question is, how do you keep it going in the absence of deep pockets?
Well, oh, goodness. There's certainly no one answer, and there's no perfect answer. That's number one. Like, there are days where you just want to just get tapped lightly by a bus, so you end up in the, so you can go and lie down in a hospital room for a while, right?
Oh my God, she is so right about that. Oh my God, yes.
But I think that it has to do, for me, with what I want to leave. Like like I'm taking up space, right? I'm taking up resources. There's a bigger thing in a way. I know that sounds almost corny because, believe me, I don't think about it most of the time. I don't think, oh, am I being useful today? No, I hardly ever think about it. But if you really feel you have something meaningful to invite people to participate in, then you're not a victim. You know, you're making a choice to say, I believe this, and I believe that other people are going to believe this. And it's your choice to do it. Nobody's asking you to do it right now. You know, you're doing it because you believe in it. So you're not a victim. That's like the main thing that keeps me going when I feel like I'm a victim. You know? And in terms of money, I don't come from any money. I come from a working class family. And this idea of not taking a job for money, sometimes you sort of gotta, you know, not that kind of job, but you know, like you don't have to take something that's against
really
what you
sunk
believe
low,
in.
right?
Yeah. But you know, you might have to take a waitressing job or whatever the heck you need to do to get by. I've had 30,000 jobs in my life before the Foundry happened and was able to pay me. But I think in terms of raising money, so the idea of not being a victim also means you know, we can always get a job. We can always get a job somewhere. Wait, you know what I mean? Just to kind of get you by. I feel like that's lucky because there's a lot of places in the world where I know artists and there isn't a place to get a job and there is no funding, and you know, so I do sort of feel like we're lucky to be able to get jobs of any kind. That said, the fundraising stuff, it sort of follows, because if you actually can hold in your heart and in your body this idea that you really are hoping to do something meaningful, then finding the money, they're lucky to give it to you.
All right. Let's hold that thought and hold it in our hearts. I'm being flashed the last question sign, and I want to ask the organizers, could we push it just 10 more minutes? Just 10 more? Is that all right with you guys? Because, thank you, because again, you'll all have plenty of time to ask, you know, questions of these three, but I've got two other really good ones to share with you. Yes, I was going to ask you, Angela, if you wanted to add something, and in particular, can I ask you the question that was asked by our first questioner? How do we create a society in which people don't fear expressing themselves so much that they self-censor?
Well, I wanted to answer the other question, but
Yeah.
I will. I think that initially, you know, it may be just one person who's speaking up and you feel that you are being punished because of what happened. But the more that people do that, like before when gay people were not comfortable coming out, eventually more and more happened, and now it's much more, you know, people can be who they are. And that's what I will say, is that all of us have to take a position of trying to do what is right and stand by that, even though often we get punished and then everybody else get away from us because of what we did and things like that. So that's the only thing that I can answer to that.
Can I just quickly add, I think if we can figure out ways, and I would love to speak with you about this at the reception, figure out ways of creating communities of misfits. Really. You know, typically misfits are sort of thought to be isolated individuals. They just don't fit, hence misfit. But if we can figure out ways of bringing misfits together, if only to understand that we, I'm going to say we, are not alone. And that there are other people who understand what the struggle is, even if their own circumstances differ and their own struggles differ. I think the ability and the willingness to create community of people who don't fit sounds like a paradox, and in many ways it is, all the more delicious a challenge as a result.
Can Can we collect some more questions?
Yeah. I've got two questions here from one from UC Irvine, who I mentioned the Net Impact chapter there is watching the live stream right now, and another from somebody who has actually tweeted in the question. So, from UC Irvine, what advice do you have for anyone feeling stuck in his or her job? Totally love your point, Melanie. You are not a victim. You have a choice. Is there anything else that you would add for those who are feeling stuck in his or her job? And the second question, this time from Twitter, some of my values are considered extreme, others not extreme enough. I'm getting hammered from both the left and the right. How should I defend my values? Let's take that one first.
Read the Twitter one again?
Yeah. Some of my
I
values.
swear I didn't tweet that.
Some of my values are considered extreme, others not extreme enough. I'm getting hammered from both the left and the right. How can I defend my values? How should I defend my values?
Well, I mean, I asked you to read it again because, I mean, this is every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Every day for me. And what I would say to that person is that if you're getting hammered by the left and the right, you're kind of doing something good. You're not stuck in a particular silo. I mean, that's one of the things I really wish people would understand. There's no right or wrong answer to any issue that's out there, except, extremes like murder, things like that. But in the political and social conversations that we're having, you can be to the right of the conversation on some things, and you can be to the left of the conversation on some things. The key is being so committed to and true to what you believe that you are willing to stand in the face of all that opposition to say, well, that's what you believe, that's what you think. I have a different point of view.
Mm-hmm. What about is it wishy-washy in your view, Jonathan, to actually invite people into conversation, i.e., I get that you disagree with me. I want to understand why.
But
and I'm not interested in foisting my opinion on you. In fact, I want to understand where you're coming from.
But see, that's the key. Being able to say, I really want to understand where you're coming from. Why do you think that? Why do you believe that? Because I truly do want to understand. That's the way I like to have conversations.
Right.
I mean, because I write and I'm on television, everyone pretty much knows what I think. So if I meet a Republican at an event or at a dinner, I will turn to them and I will ask, what is your problem with the president? Or
right.
What is wrong with the Affordable Care Act? Like, really, I really want to
right.
understand
Tell
so
me
that
what
when I write or I talk about it on television, I'm actually speaking from a place of knowledge. Now, I might disagree with you,
right.
but at least I now have a more informed opinion.
And what I love about what Jonathan just said is that it comes right back to grappling with why you believe what you believe. In a way, engaging in opposition, not confrontation, but opposition, compels us, any one of us, to sharpen and clarify to ourselves why we stand for what we stand and whether we should at all.
Right, or to change our minds.
Exactly.
I've had my mind changed many times by people just through the conversation. It's about being open.
Right, right.
Being as open as you are committed to what you believe.
Love it. Any advice for the person who is feeling stuck in a particular job, in a particular slot, a particular identity pigeonhole? How do you become dynamic? Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can't answer, but because it's not that I feel stuck, but I am at that point where I'm thinking of, okay, so what is next, if there is a next?
For you, career-wise.
Right. I mean, I've been in the current job for 8 years. It's a terrific job. But you'd be crazy not to have conversations with people, not about, oh, please hire me, but, hey, so what advice would you give me? If anyone in any profession feeling stuck should talk to their peers, should talk to their mentors, and if they don't have a mentor, find someone who is doing the job or doing the thing you want to do and get advice from them, like I did with Connie Chung. Went to her and just asked her for advice. You're never too old to ask for advice, and certainly never too old to ask for help.
Right.
And that's the key. If you're feeling stuck, start talking to people.
Yeah. Excellent.
You know,
Angela?
I'm at the same job for 33 years. And I think an advice will be, I mean, they're always part of the job. Some of it you love, some other, you can live without. To try to see if there's areas of the job that the person likes, and also see if there are changes in the company or different areas that they want to do. Like I always feel that I'm learning and evolving. Now I'm doing fundraising. I never thought I would be a fundraiser, and I love it, actually. I love talking to people and raising money. So it's
Get to know her.
so it's just figuring out how to evolve or leave and get another job and see, and then just to have different experiences.
Right. Let's take a couple more questions before we wrap up. I'm looking for the microphone runners. Okay, we'll take you, and then one last.
Hi, first of all, thank you guys for sharing your stories. I feel particularly, in touch with Angela's story. I read in your bio that you've worked a lot with sexually abused children and a lot of domestic violence cases with kids, and I'm particularly curious as to how you balance standing your moral grounds in a professional setting that limits your expression of those moral values just because you're dealing with parents, right? You're dealing with different generations of people. And in order to maintain that professional status, there is a certain vocabulary that you have to limit yourself to, right? Despite whether or not you agree with certain situations that might be happening with these kids or situations happening with the parents. And I'm really compelled to know, how do you find that perfect place in between where you can get your job done, but still also stick to your moral grounds and uphold your values and help the kids that you're trying to help?
Great, thank you. Final.
Hey, hi. So I'm wondering, as a social entrepreneur or anyone that's sort of going into new territory, I think that there's always this confrontation with the sense of isolation because you're treading new ground and or water, and I would like some answers about how perhaps you've either had an experience where you broke past that sense of isolation, or what advice you might have based on mentors that you've had or just things that you've experienced or witnessed. And I think sort of a dark side of that question or a flip side of that question might be also in this field, there's a lot more emphasis on social entrepreneurship now than there ever was before, and a lot more people coming up with innovative ideas. And to some extent, especially when you get into things of like funding or finding partners or participants, there's a sense of saturation a little bit. And I wondered how you might address that issue of feeling like, well, for the Foundry, for example, it's like, well, yeah, I would put my stamp on it, but there's already like 5 other companies that say they're doing really deep, important work, right? So, or journalists out there saying I'm covering this territory or that, or innovative health programs. So I just wondered if we could maybe talk about those two.
So I hear absolutely what you're asking in that second question, but what is the actual question? What
So
are
the
you asking
question,
them to
oh,
address?
sorry. So the question is, in a sense of like a saturation, how you define yourself in such a way that helps you achieve the goals that you want to achieve. and they might be fundraising goals, they might be partnership goals, they might be career goals, they might be just your global objective, whatever your entrepreneurship is about. So, so sort of on the flip side of being isolated, there's a sense of like the field just being saturated, and you're isolated in a saturated field.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. Notice, by the way, that none of these questions is easy to tackle, right? So, this stuff requires time and reflection and introspection and conversation and action. Angela, can we start with the question that you were directly asked?
Sure. When working with these kids, I always feel that I want to do what is best for the young person and what they want, but try to understand the young person and where they're coming from, and let's say the parents and where they're coming from. And sometimes the kid will say, oh, no. Like we will say, have you tell your parent whatever the issue? It may be that they are gay, for example. And they say, no, they will kill me. They will throw me out of the house. And I said, well, if you want, to tell your parents, you can bring your parents here. We will sit down with you, and we will help you have that conversation with them. And we will not let you go home if we think you are in danger. Like we will actually try to work that through, or the kid is pregnant, or anything like that. And sometimes people say, oh, don't you get burned out from doing that work for 30 years? And I feel no, because we help these young people, we help the parents, we help these families, we create bridges. And the kids that come to our program, their lives always get at least a little better. Some people get transformed. But, those kids, if you're being sexually abused and you are at home, you think that only happened to you. No one gave you the opportunity to talk about being the victim of incest or sexual abuse. And when the kids come to the program, we ask them directly, because we know that it happened to about 25% of the population. So I will say to them, has anyone ever touched your body when you didn't want them to? Was it your father? Was it your brother? Was it your mother, your grandparents? So just giving the kids a space to be able to express that. And then if they say, yes, my father has sex with me or whatever, it's just taking that in with a level of comfort that we don't go say, oh my God, Right. We just try to, it's not normal, obviously, it's not normalizing it in that sense, but giving the kids the sense, okay, that happened. Unfortunately, it happened to many other people, and we are here to work with you and help you heal. So it's that journey. And we take that journey with a young person. So the worst thing for anyone is to feel alone and lonely and separate and isolated, whether you are running a company and being an entrepreneur or you are being sexually abused. We just create a space of being connected, feeling meaningful, that you are not alone, that you can come and ask for help, and no issue is too big or we try to just help even a little bit and help that person feel, okay, you come here, we will help you, whatever it is. And if it's something that we don't say to the young person, we don't do that here. We get on the phone, we activate systems, we help them until they get what they need to be able to move forward. So I think that's what helped me, and that's the way I do the work and try to live that type of life. Some people say they get burned out and they go and they get another job because they feel stuck and they just feel it's too hard to do this type of work. So different people have different needs. And you just
Right.
need to recognize.
Right.
And also the last thing that I'm going to say is that people often talk about balance. I actually decided to live one life. I don't have a personal life and a professional life or any type. I have one life. And I just, I go in and out all day long between my kids, my job, my friends, my everything. Right. And I have a really rewarding life. And one of the stats said the other day, you are the only person I ever met that has just one life. Because, they think that people should have boundaries. And, and I don't know what boundaries are.
And you don't either, you said, Melanie. Right. I love your point. Different people have different needs.
Yeah.
And again,
and you have to know
exactly.
You have to know
That's what
yourself.
self-awareness is about, right? Is asking yourself, as much as you possibly can, what do I need? And to whom can I begin to reach out for help? It's not about being a victim. It's exactly the opposite. Having the agency to move forward. Finally, for now?
I think this idea, first of all, the idea of being alone and isolated, it's going to come and go the whole time you're doing this. Because you have an idea, it isn't material yet. So, and it takes, I mean, somebody said something to me, which is a mixed blessing. He said, you know, the Foundry's the Foundry's mission is 100 years, right? It's past you. And you're just going to shepherd it for this long. And so, lasting through, I'm not answering the way I want to. Let me start again. Isolation is real. It comes and it goes, and you surf it, and then it's gone again, and then it's come again, because you're trying to do something meaningful that 30,000 people are not doing. And if 30,000 people are applying for the same money, you just have to be good enough. You have to be good enough. You have to be rigorous and sure, and you have to have doubts and answer the doubts and make it better and make it better and make it better. And again, it's not like nobody's waiting for you. Right? It takes a really long time before they even thought they needed you. And it takes a long time to do something meaningful. A long, long time. I think.
Beautiful. And real, very real. On that note, let's wrap up the formal part of this evening and make our way into the reception. But before you do, I just want to share one quick story with you. Earlier today, before the event got underway, somebody I know came up to me to say hello. And she said, you know, I'm literally, like, I've got to leave early, but I knew I had to come to tonight's event because I've been wondering, am I badass enough? And I said to her, you know, the very fact that you're wondering, that you're asking yourself if you're badass enough, I think is itself an indication of just how unusual you are. So I hope you get comfortable in the discomfort of asking yourselves lots of questions. It's not enough anymore to be world aware. That's where the trend is. But you are of the world. Never fear becoming self-aware. Thank you to all of our speakers tonight.